Okay, so we've got this harness. It's the coil and injector harness from a like 2005-ish Ford Focus 2.3. We're going to be gutting this harness here for a couple of things, just to take a look at it. I noticed that Ford has a noise suppressor that's in line here, so we're going to see where all this goes. So as you guys can see, that everything is stripped out of it with the exception of the coil wiring. So what I find interesting here is that Ford has an idea that there's a ton of noise. So all the, what I assume is all the power wires, it could have been all the signal wires, I'm not sure, but they were all grouped into here. And then it follows into a condenser. And these are supposed to eliminate noise. So they did this from the factory. So at this point, we're just gonna wire it up. Again, we're gonna do waste spark again. And then hopefully that fixes our noise problem on the Ranger. Okay, I'm sure people are gonna wonder why I had to do this manually instead of looking the manual. So if you look here, you can see that all the these two wires here are green with black stripe, and it's actually both of them. So if you follow down to the next coil, if you look, you'll see that that's green orange and green orange. So each coil has has a different set of wires, but they're the same per pair. So green / whatever, and it comes out of both wires. Now, if you look at this on the actual coil itself, you can see that it's clearly marked B+, so battery positive. So once I broke down the harness, I found out that the noise suppression is on the power side. So all the power wires come out of here. And so, like I said, we're going to try to retain this noise suppressor. It does have a part number on it, but it does look a little beat up. You see the wires are starting to come out of it. I don't think it really matters, but there is a part number. So we may replace it, we may not. So we're gonna give it a shot, ground this out. This was grounded to the chassis, by the way, on the Escort. There was like a bracket that this grounded to. So I guess we're gonna try to do the same thing there, and hopefully that it goes away. So what I'm going to try to do is just to install the coils themselves without the noise suppressor, and then see what happens, just for science sake, really. Then plug it in, and then, you know, see if it fixes our problems. Okay, so a little bit more exploring, I guess. So out of this bundle, this is the power wire. And this power wire here is joined to all the coil power wires. So when we make our new harness, this will be power. Everything else right here is the signal wires per coil. So that's going to be, again, we're gonna tie these together so they're waste spark. And then this is ground. So this wiring is a lot simpler than the Audi wiring for sure, because these are dumb coils. Now, I do want to talk about this, is that dumb coils don't have a built-in igniter, so not a lot of ECUs can handle it. The ECU Masters is one of them that can handle both, so that's why we're able to make the transition. Now, if you're doing this like on, say, like a Mega Squirt or some other ECU, you will need like a coil driver. Okie dokie. So this is done. I'm not going to put this in the Molex connector just yet, because this is the female side of it. You can actually just slide it in without even having to do anything, just because I don't want to go through the extra effort if it does not work out. I'm not taping these up just yet either, for the same reasons as above. So we're going to drop the coils in, hook this end up, drop the coils in. We're going to make the changes in the software, then we'll hook this up, and then hopefully it starts and runs. Okay, so we have the software opened up. Again, coils are plugged in but no power going to them, and we just simply are going to click coils without amplifier. Go ahead and save that, and we will I believe, I'm not quite sure, I don't know if you have to retime it or not, but I guess we'll figure it out. So I'm going to go out here into the engine bay, plug it in, and then hopefully it starts. All right, it's running a little rough, obviously, but as you can see, it seems like our noise has gone away. Looking over here, I had to change the output offset really quick, and so I basically got it pinned wrong. So you've got to yeah, basically, like when you have the offset at 1, it fires 2 1 2 1 instead of 1 2 1 2. So I'm going to go out there and just mechanically change it on the connector. Not a big deal, but it runs. Again, it's running a little bit on the rough side. Let's see why. I did try to crank it and stuff. Ooh, wow, this thing is like real rich. Oh, map sensor's not hooked up. Whoops, maybe that's important. Okay, so I got it switched up. Idle's good. As you see, the tachometer's not picking up any noise. And keep in mind that the ground noise suppressor is not hooked up. I'm gonna go ahead and hook it up somewhere. So that just goes to show that our issues that we had was 100% noise related. So now that we got the coils isolated and actually all the way in the valve cover, that as you can see, it's all working. ECU's not acting up. So there is that. Go ahead and shut this thing off. So I'm super happy with that, and I will go over what we all have to do mechanically to switch it over. All right, so this is what we're using for the Ford Ranger to secure the coils in, and I'll show you here in a second. So the Ford Ranger actually has like the holes for the coil packs. They just don't have an insert in them. All right, so if you look at this is number 1 here, you can see that the coil is currently offset, but the hole right here is actually for the coil to mount up to, as you can see. So on the Focus vehicles, there's a threaded insert here. So this threaded insert is it right here. Well, these are for like 3D printed stuff here. The thing is that this is the factory bolt that I pulled off the Focus. It's not going to work. I had ordered these inserts that were the correct size for these, and their diameter was too large. I could not fit it into the valve cover. So I have the one for number 4 set in. And number 4 is a complete pain because the factory harness runs above it, so I had to kind of tug it out of the way to get to it. So it's like really tight in there, but as you can see, that's the insert in, and I just like set it in there, hit it with a hammer with an extension, and it went right in, no problem. So now I just got to get hardware for it. Okay, so the inserts are in. What a complete pain in the ass, but they are in. There are some clearance issues on cylinder number 1 and the idle air control valve, but there's enough play in it. I think that we can just kind of force that over with a bolt and washer and get that in. 2 and 3 though are good. So really 1 and 4 are the ones that have a problem. So 4 is the one that's the biggest one. The reason being is that like I said, the harness is in the way, but you can same deal. There's enough flex in it where you can kind of get it lined up there. So now we just gotta get some hardware and stick it in. Okay, so here is the part number for the correct bolts. I got these from the local AutoZone here. As you can see, there's a little bit of thread left. Fits the head. I'm gonna try to find some washers that are gonna fit in here just to give it like a snug fit, but that is going to be it. So here we are on Rock Auto's website, and this is actually how I came across the relatively bolt-on coil and plug for the Ranger. So this is Rock Auto's website. If you guys are familiar or not, we're not sponsored by them or anything, but they do have a really good parts catalog. So this is the valve cover. As you can see, I went through the whole drop-down menu here, Ranger 2.3, blah, 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 whatever. So once you click on the part number, it actually shows you like what it's compatible to. Now, you know, I know just from experience that the Mazda MZR and the Ford Duratec are pretty closely related. And even to this day, like Mazda Speed, EcoBoost stuff, pretty closely related stuff. So anyways, what I ended up doing was I went through the years. I picked the newest ones that I could find and then looked it up. Now, here's the thing. This valve cover gasket, even though that means that it's the same gasket, does not mean that the cover's the same. So for instance, as you guys know, on the Ford Ranger, it's got an external coil with wires going to it, but the Mazda Speeds have VVT, and then Ford has this weird cylinder head temperature sensor thing smack dab in the center of it. So I had to look at a ton of different valve covers to find out what was going to work. So I ended up looking through all the Mazda stuff, and I found that, you know, none of them would work because they had like the VVT setup. So what I ended up stumbling across though was this one right here, the Ford Transit Connect, which is like their small little 6-seater. It's usually a mini cargo van that's like the Nissan NV200, but they also make like a passenger version of it. So at that point, I looked up 2000. I think I picked like 2015 Transit or something. So I typed it into Google, and I found that it had everything that we need. 1, it was coil and plug. 2, it had the same hole in the center for the cylinder head temperature, and 3, it did not have the VVT port on it. So then I did the exact same thing. Unfortunately, you can't find the actual valve cover in Rock Auto, but you know, I hopped into Google and I typed in 2015 Ford Transit valve cover, and it spit out a couple different ones, and then I looked for a part number interchange, and that's when I stumbled across that the valve cover is actually the same for like a 2005 Focus. So at that point I went out to the junkyard and I took a look at the valve covers and it looked the exact same. So, but yeah, that's how I basically figured it out. So once I was out in the junkyard, I went ahead and pulled the coils out of it. I pulled one coil, one singular coil, and I took it back here to the shop and I matched it up to the spark plug wire, and it was the correct depth. And then, so at that point I was either going to buy a valve cover to swap it over. I didn't buy the valve cover at the junkyard just because that if it didn't work, I wanted to be able to return it, just because we don't know how fit's going to be. So, but that's how I stumbled across what would work in terms of adding coil on plug. So this is the next part of it. Just like I said, I typed in 2010, I thought it was 2015, but I typed in 2010 Ford Transit valve cover, and so it pulled me up to this interchange. So if you take a look here, 2005 to 2011 Ford Focus 2.0, and then 2005 to 2007 Ford Focus 2.3. And so, you know, I hopped onto our local junkyard to see if they had any of those vehicles, and they had a ton of them. So, and that's basically how I found it. So this is not an uncommon thing in our industry when you're trying to make things fit, you know, and this is the way I go through trying to find parts interchange, what's going to work, just by simply looking at like a common part and then see if it works.